Yes, yes. So, was it last week? I think it was last week we discussed how both of us have changed, not necessarily the entire system that we work with, but because of our context shift and the big change, we've adopted some things, thrown away some things, and changed the ways that we work. I've got a new job working as a researcher for another creator called James Janney. I can name it now. Yes. Woohoo. So that's been fun. I've been in London 4 days this week, so it's like a 2 hour journey there, 2 hour journey back, and a 8 hour day, like 8 hour work day. So it's been pretty full on. Some people have said, like some people close to me, my family and friends have said, that's a really long day. But when I actually map out my day when I'm at home, it's actually shorter. Because when I'm at
Yeah, I
home,
could
I
imagine
get out of my
because you.
bed,
Yeah.
like get out of my bed, get in my chair, and I work. And it's like, oh, let's go downstairs for lunch, come back upstairs and work, and then go downstairs for dinner, go upstairs and work. It's like I wake up and I'm constantly going. Whereas going to London, I have to actually like drive, like move from my room to the train station. Then obviously get on the train, then move from the train to the tube, navigate around places. So there's spots of me not being productive. Yeah, exactly.
Not being productive. Oh, okay.
I'm using like the traditional like hustle culture, productivity, self-help rhetoric, where it's like, oh, you need to be doing everything all the time, blah blah blah. Yeah, um, it's actually quite nice because
What, not doing everything all of the time?
it's not necessarily that. Like I much prefer like me just sitting here going at it all day, because I'm just in my head all day. But it's nice to have a rest day. But people think that like people don't see it as a rest day because they don't see what I do normally. Ah, actually, that might be an interesting conversation. I'll let you explain your situation, then I'll.
Yeah. So, for me, my partner wanted to go back into work, and a traditional job, which she just wanted to get out the house. She has looked after, so I have two children, both with additional needs, both diagnosed autistic. And so there's a lot of stuff that happens that needs to be done all of the time. And they are currently in year five and year six. My daughter was held back a year just to give her a chance to actually develop as her own person, because my little boy is very much like he's grounded in who he is or was. Whereas my daughter just copied him. She has echolalia, so she repeats and just mimics all of that rather than having her own ideas and thoughts. So we separated them at that point. And basically, my partner was like, I want to get a job. As a lot of changes in the industry, the business industry, where all of the fear mongering and the panicking about recession and everything. So my revenue has gone down anyway, and my health was not doing too great. And so my partner was like, I'm happy to go to work. She wants to go to work. She's very social, and had been isolated for a while because for the last 10 years, the kids are now, she's been home with them. And I enjoy the kids. And for me, it's something that I like. So we shifted roles and responsibilities. So I primarily look after the kids and deal with the house and all the other stuff, whilst also running my business, and doing the podcast and all of the other things that I do. And for me, I agree with your sentiment of like there are bits where you're not doing things, and that's been really interesting because I was very much like you. I came into my office, I came into this room, and I was just working. As soon as I started work, I then finished work. Like it didn't end. But now obviously it's I'm up earlier, a little bit earlier, not much earlier, but up a little earlier with the kids. I know
Up
you're
a,
up much earlier.
I got a 3 hour difference.
Oof, fun. Like I'm taking the kids to school, I'm coming back, and then I've got my work, and then I'm going to pick up the kids. So the time I have is so much less, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. Like trying to navigate what I'm doing in that time. There's not as much time to just play in my business as I used to do, which is good and not at the same time. So I've been working on, for myself, figuring out what I need. So I adopted Morgan as a task manager because it was quick and simple and fast, and it works. And it looks nice, and I get shiny things that go ping whenever I tick it.
I can say something. This is going out next week. So by the time this goes out, the thing that I'm now going to say is like, it's a thing. Morgan are making big updates. And there's some stuff coming out. I'm not going to name too much because I'm not 100% sure what's going to be released. But I've got a video coming out this week, so by the time you hear this, it'll be like last week, about all of the new things, all of the plans moving forwards with Morgan, and they're looking to not necessarily move away from the calendar, because the calendar is still like their focus, but they're moving towards like really emphasizing the tasks and sort of like the integration, the techie API sort of stuff. So
please give me API, Morgan. I will have so much fun.
Developing your own sort of integration things, that sounds really good, doesn't it? Yeah. And when you mentioned Morgan for tasks, I was looking through some of the task managers that people typically use, like Todoist and TickTick and all the other stuff. And it's funny, I came across one of Marquez's highlight like clip things from his Waveform podcast that I watched 4 months ago. It's like a 6-month-old thing where they're talking about Daybridge. And Marquez basically lives his life on Google Calendar, Google Tasks, and Google Maps. And he uses TickTick for his task manager, sort of here and there. And his co-host on the podcast was saying that he uses alarms for everything. Like if he needs to take the rubbish out or like remind himself of something, he just names an alarm. The alarm goes off on his phone. But Morgan does that. Like Morgan has the push notifications of every task, and it's a task. When you tick it, it disappears on PC. On phone, that's an update that they're working on, because obviously the phone's still in beta. But I'm like, Morgan's a calendar app, but it's actually a task app and a calendar app. And where it's going, it could be more than that.
I'm quite excited to see what happens with Morgan. I must admit, since switching over to Morgan, I spent less time in my own Obsidian vault because I don't need it. Because like I didn't need it in the same ways I do when I'm doing research. I go into my Obsidian for my research now. Like everything else is just in Morgan. My capture is in Morgan. If I have to do something, it goes into Morgan. And it's just put on the sidebar. I mean, I can't wait until they fully launch their mobile app and it's done, because I miss being able to quick glance. The widgets are still not working for me, but that's okay. And I know it's beta, and I'm excited for when it is out.
Well, the widget is like alpha to beta. The app is like beta. But because they've been working on this other project, obviously they've been sort of divided, but they've hired a couple of new developers for the Morgan, and then they can sort of focus in, because obviously it takes time, it takes money to develop other tools and stuff.
Yeah, and it's quite I just love Morgan. Like I don't think I've ever found because it's like Todoist in a way. It's Todoist plus a calendar, and I never got on with Todoist. I hate lists. And I don't use Morgan as a list. I don't have it in the list view. I use it. It's kind of almost like a para thing with a project. All of my lists in Morgan's are like area categories, is what you probably call it. So I have the self-organization. I literally have two. One is self-organization, which is just organizing me. And one is home, which is all of the housey stuff that I have to do. And that's literally it. And then I have the inbox when I can't be bothered, but most of it goes in self-organization or home.
Yeah, no, I just brought my Morgan up because I needed a double check. I have my inbox, which is where I'm just like, here's dump shit. I'm a dump, put stuff in there. I mean, I've got a film in there with a link. I've got 2 GitHub repos. I have 2 tasks, and then a task that I've left behind, which is actually in something. I've got 2 something left behinds. And then I got a research list, a videos list, and a course list. The research is basically, what do I need to do for research work, like questions in there. The videos are, this could be a cool idea for a video, but it's not in what I would class as my project management, which is an Obsidian. It's not in there because it's not worth being in there. It's like sort of there, sort of not. There's no narrative around it. It's just a thing. And then course it's like, what do I need to do? And then I plan it out, and I've actually planned it out over the weekend. So it's like when you think about information management or the PKM or BSB or whatever you want to talk about, when it comes to changing a system, the calendar's not going anywhere.
I've become more reliant on my calendar.
Yeah, and
I use my calendar far more because now time is an actual constraint that I have to respect. Whereas before, when it was just me working constraint, that was not a constraint for me. It was free flowing, it was freedom, it was I can go and do what I need to do when I need to do it. But now time is a real darn constraint, which is very annoying because I'm not great with.
And this is what's interesting, right? I was having a look on YouTube for all of like the time help. How do you manage your time? Blah 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 stuff. The Eisenhower matrix comes out with delegate.
Oh, I hate the Eisenhower matrix.
Yeah, then you got the Pomodoro stuff that pops in, and all the other advice of like, oh, you should do this is a quick thing. You can do that in 1 minute, or the GTD advice. There's all it's generalized advice.
This is the thing that I've been getting. Like, this is something that's on my docket to create. How do you actually do? Because everyone talks about like the philosophy of doing it, but no one actually does. A lot of the product, like
they love using analogies.
How do you do your tasks? And that's kind of like the motivation of getting started, the actual process of doing, like taking the actions, moving forward, like breaking past stopping points, things that are getting in the way. And then how do you close off a task? Nobody actually talks about that bit because
yeah. When you say close off a task, this is something I was talking to David, the CEO of Morgan, and his sort of ideals about this. I was like, that's a really good point. So in GitHub/GitLab, when you have developers, some people have completed their task of the project. So they've written the code, but it needs to be reviewed. So the task is done, but it's not completely done. And I think that's the same for us, like personally, when we're doing something, it's like, it's done, but I need to do that next thing. Morgan, you've got multiple sessions. So I'm like, I'm going to add multiple sessions, or I need it to be dependent on something else. Hint, hint to what Morgan's working on.
No. Oh, that's going to be amazing. Anyway, yeah. Like, and I think that nobody talks about that bit in the business space in particular. Like,
well, August Bradley's got his dependent relation task thing.
Yeah, but that's not doing it, is it? It's how to organize it so you do it, but not actually talking about, like, one of the things that I do in one of my courses, inside of Task Tape for Busy Brains, is actually break that down of like, what is the actual doing of it? Because everyone because like, yes, the capturing of the task is an action. You're doing the task. You are doing it. The organizing of that, putting it into projects, moving it into this, or adding the constraints that suit your environment. That's the organizing of it. But what's that final step? Like, what is that final step? And that's the bit that I'm actually fascinated by, because everyone's like, oh, I never complete my tasks. I just have an elongated task list. I personally believe that people don't need more organizing. They need more help on that doing part.
So I'm going to, I guess, to use a bit of a saying, I'm going to spit in the face of most creators because they use a philosophy from cognitive psychology, and they use cognitive load theory and all this, that, and the other. But John Sweller, the guy that created cognitive load theory, like the person that came up with the hypothesis, the idea, says, actually, you know what? I can bring up the quote so I don't get it wrong, because I was referencing this with James the other day. Where is it? It's in Slack. I don't like Slack. So the quote is, I can't screen share this because obviously it's Slack conversations. If a student cannot organize information, it is more likely that they suffer from the complexity of the particular information they are dealing with rather than ignorance of how to organize information. Simply put, if you don't understand what you're trying to organize, you can't organize it. It's not you can't organize and you don't know how to organize, it's you don't understand what you're trying to organize. And that, I think, is the big problem when it comes to like time blocking and time management and stuff, is people know to put things on a calendar. People know what time blocking is. People know what the Pomodoro timer is. When you watch all these videos, I sit there and go, I know that, I know that, I know that, I know that, I know that. Yeah, duh. It still doesn't help me. How do I do the thing?
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm like...
And they can't tell you. No one can tell you how to organize the thing because they don't know what you're trying to organize, i.e. what you're trying to understand. Which is why when I see videos explaining it, they all use a project to explain it. Because it's like, this is a project because they understand their project and they are then organizing their project. But your project isn't their project. So you can't go, oh, I will just copy that because your project is different.
And that is the thing. Like one of the processes that I use whenever I do system builds for people is the definitions. Because everyone says that when I say project, we all have a very differing idea of what a project is, because it's not the same, but everyone there is an assumption that it is this kind of thing. But when I poke at it, it's like, oh no, it's not actually really that. It's this. Okay, cool. Why? And actually going into like so when is a task and a project a project? Is there something in between a task and a project? How do you know when this is this and this is that? It's like, if you don't know this, then designing a system around information you do not have is going to be difficult. And wrapping it back to our topic, that is exactly why my system is not existing right now. Well, okay, it is existing, but it is not, it's an emergent system. It's coming into view. I just basically cut everything. I wiped my docket clean. I stopped on my podcast. I stopped doing basically everything because for me, the focus was one on my kids and the remaining energy that I had, knowing that energy is one of the constraints that I have. Well, we all have.
Like, I was going to say that.
We all have energy constraints, but like knowing that I needed to pay particular attention to that, because when change happens, my energy goes down because it takes me longer to process things, which is very aggravating and annoying. But that is something that I know about myself. And I know how
everyone. When everyone's energy goes down.
Well, I can't say that because I don't know for everybody. So I'm not going to make that assumption.
When you take a step back, I know you're still thinking like where you're still thinking from, but when you take a step back, if someone has less energy than they did before, are they more or less likely to be able to focus?
Well, yeah, it's true. Less.
Yeah. But I understand where your head is at. You're like coming from the neurodivergent space of, oh, I can still see where your identity is not necessarily shaping, but it's like it's bias. I guess we were talking. Was it last week about translating? Like,
yes, I'm in the translating stage. Yes, absolutely. That's where I am right now. Yeah, and so that our energy levels influence everything that we do. And right now, it's lower. That's it. That's just that's true. And so I have to work alongside that, as we all do. And so for me, just scrapping everything, just
pausing
everything and just go, okay, let's just go with what I have, like what comes up immediately, what I need right now, and allowing that to change and evolve as I'm going and as things occur. And oh, that's not worked. Okay, why is it not worked? Like just slowly building it instead of trying to build this overly deliciously complicated system which tries to do everything all at once, because then I have to adopt that as well.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, going right back down to just Morgan and putting in a task in my phone instead of using Obsidian, which I know enough about the tool to be dangerous now, or going back to Notion, which I definitely know enough to be dangerous about, or using any other API related stuff because I know enough to be dangerous now, and to start coding my own stuff, which I probably will end up doing because it's fun, not because I need it. But right now, my priority is literally I am so hyper focused on just getting through the day and allowing that to come through.
So I want to discuss sort of tasks a little bit more when it comes
Cool.
to sort of like what tasks are, what projects are, those sorts of things. Because with massive projects, there are loads of tasks. And with the research project I'm doing at the moment, when I say there are loads of tasks, I'm talking into the hundreds, like 200-300 tasks to do, like quite easily, because I'm like, okay, I need to find this source, or I need to find a source for that, or I need to fact check this, which is
Can you define just so that we're both on the same
yeah,
page? Can you find a task for you? What a task is for you, or for the
something that's going to take up my time.
okay, cool. And what is a project then?
Something like, to me, a project and a task are essentially the same thing.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
Like in my head, the only way in my head that I can differentiate a project and a task is a project has multiple tasks.
Yeah, it's fairly
But
simple.
but a task has subtasks, which means a task could be a project.
Yeah.
So I don't like saying, oh, this is a project, this is a task. The only reason I have a project label for things is to group similar tasks together. So one of the projects I've got at the moment, which everyone can see on the Vaultcraft thingy, what's the word? Publish, is information industry. Like that is a project.
Yeah.
But what it really is, it's a file of a load of tasks. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So all of these sort of tasks that I've got to do with these projects is like, well, I need to find a source for this. So is there a video that says it? Is there a blog that says it? Is it a legal documentation that says it? Fact check it. How many fact sources do I have? And then all these people involved, are they actually people involved, or is it just hearsay? And each of those small little actions are tasks. Do I put them all in something like Todoist? No. No is the answer to that one. So where do I put it? I tried putting it in Notion, and do you know what happened? The database looked way too scary. I was like, nope. There's like, I mean, I only got through well, I guess the prologue and like half of chapter 1, and I'm already looking at like scrolling 7 or 8 times down the database. I'm like, nope, that's not happening. Okay, let's hide it in toggles inside of Notion. You know what that did? Nothing. Because you open the toggle, you go, damn, there's a lot of stuff in here. So what was the solution that we found, or that I found? Putting it into Obsidian. And I know that sounds really stupid, but putting it into Obsidian in the canvas. So the canvas has become the entirety of the project. Yes, it looks like an absolute mess, but we have a timeline, and the timeline relates to all of the other actions in the timeline. So is there a source there? Yes. Is there not? No. So we need to put a card in there, say question mark, whatever source it is. All the other actions related to B-roll, research, sources, stories, all the stuff's there. So you can see everything at once. But if you need to narrow in on one section you're doing, one part that you're doing, one thread of a story, you can just go there and see it and then zoom back out again.
So is that one? I'm just now very intrigued. Is that one document which then you kind of zoom in on the canvas? Because one of the things that I'm kind of navigating when I do get in there is like what goes in the document and what just goes on the canvas as a card. Because it can do both.
When you say document, I assume you're talking like an Obsidian file, yeah?
Yeah, I'm talking about Obsidian files. So say for example, I've got my Vault up.
Can you
I'm
share it?
working on a project. I can once I go onto yours, not mine. I'm glad I'm not the only one who's having trouble with things just coming straight into the main folder, not into the
Oh no, that's deliberate.
Oh, cool.
That was deliberate. That was me where I did it on my phone and I hadn't actually synced up the Vault properly. So I was like, I don't want it to be lost, so I'm going to leave it in there. That was whenever it was created. It was obviously when I created it, but I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just dump it there because I don't. You know you can change the default file location, right?
Yes, I it was less about that. It was more about yeah, I don't remember now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the reason it's there is because I hadn't set up my quick adds and my commanders on my phone at that point.
Ah, makes sense.
So so I can push the plus button. I was just like, create new note in default vault so I don't forget that I have this thing.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that was a weird glitch. Yeah, so I haven't been in here for so long. I'm just looking at it going, oh yeah, that's what I was doing.
Yeah, so if you
So,
share your screen, we can see sort of what you're referring to when it comes to sort of file versus canvas sort of thing.
so here we have a massive freaking file. Well, it's not massive, it's a tiny file in comparison, but there's a lot in
You've seen
here.
some of mine, right?
I have, yes. Like this is a bigger file as such. And so I have information in here, and then obviously I've got
Damn, that's
my
a big
canvas.
sidebar.
Yeah, I know. I had it out recently. I don't know why it's actually stayed that way. I'm noticing that it syncs between my different vaults. It's weird. Um, so what I've done, I don't know whether this even works. I've renamed. Yeah. So what I have done is when I've had ideas, I've zoomed in on the individual block. But I'm like, do I want to do that? And I've been testing it because I'm thinking of like all the ideas that I have. Do I put it in the main page because it's in the main page, which is this one, or do I put it on the canvas first? And that has been like, oh, I wonder which one, because I originally this here was just my brain dump of like my own personal opinions and views on all the things for a thing that I did. And then I was like, oh, this actually would be really valuable inside of here because it's my thoughts, which I can then turn into content later on. And obviously it's been put in there. And so my question has become, where do I want it in here? Do I want it? Is it a card in here or is it a thing in here? And so that for me was like, is there a difference?
Yes.
Yes. That is what I
Yes.
got. I'm looking over there because you're over there. We move over here, so it actually looks like I'm not. Yeah, like there is a difference, but what is that? And I haven't got into that yet with my own space because I haven't been in it enough. It's not emerged for me, so I'm intrigued what it is for you, as we have quite a similar in
Yeah,
many
so
ways.
there's two answers to this because one of them is for me and
Yes.
one of them is for collaboration. Now, the collaboration is still a work in progress because I sort of onboarded 2 months into a project. So I was thrown in like the real deep end and had to catch up with like 2 months worth of research, which I did in like 4 or 5 days. That was a lot of organizing of stuff. Yeah, let's just say I don't want to be working in like 4 tools at once with duplicate information everywhere. That's not fun. Uh, yeah, that face is what my internal face was like when I saw everything. I was like, oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, so with my work, the way that I have it in my head is the canvas. I can show you example, but because I've got stuff on this, yeah, I'll share it, but it's very not nice at the moment. So for context for everyone else having a look, you can see on the left side, I've got the file, information
Yep.
industry, and then I have everything that's going on. You can see I've got 3 drafts, all in one file. So draft 1, this is all the stuff in draft 1. This is all the draft stuff in draft 2, which I haven't actually finished, and then draft 3, and then I have sources. So primary sources and secondary sources will go in there when I've organized them. But this is a file that goes up and down. I know that was a very stupid comment, but it goes up and down. Like it's very hard to look at this and be like, oh yeah, that's linked to that section of there, which also links to it's hard to see those connections without
Yes.
scrolling up and down a lot. And it's a pain when you're trying to brainstorm. So here is where I'm like, okay, this is where it all links. And you can see this point. So the first part of chapter 1 links into like this section down here, which is towards the end of chapter 5. These points in chapter 2 also link to this part. Oh, I've got a hair underneath my mouse. There we go. These 2 parts link to chapter 5, and I can see the arrows going in different directions. And if I zoom in a little bit to this, you can see this arrow actually goes between like chapter 3 and chapter 4, and I can see the differences. This is what I mean by like it's all muddled, because that's what it would be, but because I've got the supercharged links here, it makes it look different, so the sizes are wrong. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I've got like, here's the section that I can see written. So these are actually linked to the section, so I can see what I've written so far at that point. This is when I was working on draft 2. And these are the points that I want to convey in that section. And this is something else that's sort of related. Like, is the template selling unethical? Question mark. And then that obviously is part of chapter 3, which is the PKM community. This is obviously draft 2. And these all seem to link to chapter 5, which was about misinformation. This has since changed because I've changed the narrative. But I use the canvas as a, hey, this is a brainstorm of what's going on. Where are the links? Where are the connections? What's happening? Here's the script. Here's the narrative. Let's read down in time. So I treat the file as a timeline going down in time, but I treat the canvas as a brainstorm of what the F is going on. And here I can see, referring back to the tasks, here I can see all the tasks that I need to do. Obviously, in this one, there wasn't that many because I've done most of this already. So all this research, but I can come in here and be like, oh, okay, written content, minimal content, generalized advice. Is that any good? And this is where, if I was doing this to start with, I would link out and be like, okay, here's a source, here's a Twitter thread, or here's a video, or here's a blog that supports this or doesn't support this. And it helps me brainstorm things.
So would you actually link to, so obviously you have things in Zotero for people who don't know, which I assume people here would know. You have it in Zotero, you bring it into Obsidian and then put it into do you do it that way?
Yes. So
yeah.
My process is I research the stuff. So that's finding the sources. Then I consume the stuff, that is reading, listening, watching stuff. And during the consumption phase, I need a note to put the thing.
Yeah.
So I capture it to Zotero, and then when I'm reading, consuming the thing, it's captured into Obsidian as an inbox. And then I'm just going to change my settings quickly so I can show you. And then once it's inside of Obsidian, I can link and do whatever I want with it because it's Obsidian. Right. So, yeah. Right. I can share this now. So what I've done is I've taken off the ability so you can't read anything apart from a couple of bits here and there. But this is the collaborative timeline, me mapping stuff out, right?
Yeah.
And here you can see there's the task list, there's the timeline, here's the other things that's going on. There's loads of stuff going on. And that's what I mean by I can see everything at an overview. What's going on? I've got the task list, I've got small tasks.
So the task list, I assume, is that part of the same page? Do you have a single page for that?
So the canvas that I was just showing you, nothing in there is an actual file. They are all just blank cards. But it's linked to the file, like the actual script file.
Okay, cool. So the script file is much cleaner in that instance versus yours. It was cleaner as such.
Sort of, because this is collaborative.
Yeah.
I have my sort of research of what's going on, like for my own head, my own sort of like file and timeline. That is my canvas. James has his own canvas. James has his own research file. And obviously he's the one that writes the script. So he's got his own script as well. So when it comes to me mapping all this stuff out, James can come in and be like, do I have a source for this? Do I have B-roll for this? Have I fact-checked this? And if I have fact-checked this, he can see where it is and he can go to the source.
Because you can come into your thing, see your tasks, look at that, see it's fact-checked, etc., etc.
Well, he doesn't even need to see the task. He can just, like, when he's writing the script, it's like a workflow example, he can write a script and be like, oh, I think this person said that. Then he comes into my canvas, goes into whatever thread he's talking about, have a look for the person or whatever, and he can see directly what's related, what's not related, and what's been said. If he wants to dive in a bit more, he can then go into that source and find all the notes that I took. And if he wants to consume it himself, he can. And maybe he has consumed it and he's already got notes on it, he just forgot about it, but it's all linked.
No,
which
and that works really well. So in terms of like the tactical, practical things, there's a canvas for each person doing it. So there's a canvas for you, canvas for him, because a file for you, file for him, because of course you can't work on the same document together right now in Obsidian.
I mean, even saying that, the way we divvy up our time is obviously done with Morgan. For reference, I had to cut stuff out because I couldn't say the stuff that I said, so we went backwards and forwards. But basically, the canvas that I was just talking about, what we do is I work on the canvas in one time slot, and then James can work on the exact same canvas in a different time slot.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so we divvy up the time, and because we've divvied up the time to whatever it is inside of Morgan, of course, we can essentially work in the vault, like in the same vault at the same time. And actually, something that's really cool, which I didn't realize until obviously working with someone else, is with Zotero, with the MarkDB Connect plugin, if you have two files of the same name in the same vault, and you right click and say open Markdown note, it will give you two options.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
So James has a source, I have a source, and they are both linked in Zotero.
Ooh.
And you can pick which one you want to go to.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's really nice. And because we have the vaults set up the same way we have our vault, the Vaultcraft vault, he's got a folder, I've got a folder, so the paths are different. So it doesn't matter that they're the same psyche because the path is different.
I mean, I brought in one of your references just to make notes on as well. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was an AI one, and it's nice to have both of our things together. I was like, oh, is that unproductive to create my own note? And then I'm like, no, because it's my own thoughts, which is kind of the damn point.
Yep.
What I find interesting and useful, and what you find interesting and useful, is kind of the thing about this vault that's quite interesting, or will be when I actually get into the fucking thing. My time block.
Well, having said that though, I mean, most of my time is not in Vaultcraft at the moment because obviously work. But when I am in there, I'm working on one file, one canvas. That's it. But all the other stuff is like background.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm the same. People on the audio, I am shaking my head. I'm like, oh, that's a thing. Oh, put that there. Let's put that over there. I'm gonna forget it. Put it there. Oh, that's another thing.
This is one of the gripes I want to have with the PKM world and this whole Zettelkasten and Atomic Notes bullshit. Yes, I called it bullshit. I'm going to emphasize bullshit, BS, because
just in case you didn't hear, just in case, I want to just clarify. I'm not sure Danny's being clear on his opinions here. He thinks it's bullshit, and I tend to agree, to be quite honest. I look at it and I see the Johnny decimal system, and I'm like,
that's one of them.
Why?
Well, I don't have a problem with the Johnny decimal system. I have a problem with the thing that you've put in it, i.e., how big is the actual file that you've had to file with the Johnny decimal system?
I just, like, for me, I don't get it. I hate the overtly, like,
it's used for a library.
Yeah,
but it's used in a
library.
But if you have a vault that is literally a book per file, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has that, but it would make sense.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the Atomic Notes Zettelkasten thing, Zettelkasten is systems thinking. When you look at systems thinking outside of Zettelkasten, it means far more than clip, like note box. Having a Zettelkasten is just having a place to put your notes. That's all it is. When it comes to the linking your thinking and sense making and all that stuff, it's basically think with notes, which means write. Okay, cool. You're telling me to write. Great. Atomic notes. Well, if you have small, really small notes, and when I say really small notes, I'm saying smaller than 1,000 words. Yeah. If it's smaller than 1,000 words, I wouldn't say it's like a working note. You're not actually doing anything with it. It's just a collection of bullet points.
I must admit, because I still got to go through my vault. There are so many little tiny scraps that when I first started using Obsidian, I wouldn't, it was an atomic note idea. And then I'm like, I never used any of it. And then I look back at it now. So when I was doing the organization to get it in here, which I gave up because it was just like, there's not enough notes to even bother trying to do this properly. So I'm just going to bring it in and then deal with it later. Because I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm unlikely to reference it again for a while. So I don't need, when I need to sort it out, I will sort it out.
So what I've done is I have it in my inbox.
Yeah.
It's just like, here's a load of stuff. If you get like 20 minutes, go through a couple of them, sort some stuff out, and then whatever. And it goes away over time.
I mean, my sources are much smaller than yours, so I would probably get it done in a day.
I currently have 291 in the inbox.
Oh.
John's got like 10. I was debating about putting a limit on mine because yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean it doesn't show all of them because it's I think I've got it as I think I have it as a limit anyway. I think I've limited.
Oh yeah, yours is limited to 30. I'm going in and changing it. I'm just getting rid of the limit.
Oh, you getting rid of the limit on yours or mine?
No, on yours. Yours is
Okay,
38.
I was about to do that. I've got 40.
40?
Yeah, supposedly.
Mine says 38 on your are you on your dashboard inbox or?
Yeah, on my inbox. Why is that in there? That shouldn't be in there. Cool. I'll have to go and deal with that later.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, I mean that was what I made. What was it last week? Like really, really quick. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
cool.
I mean, organizing those sources can be done whenever you want, really. But
Yeah.
if you have loads and loads of small files, in my head, those small files are just a card and a canvas while you're brainstorming something.
Yes.
Like a bigger narrative story. It's not its own thing. If it's its own thing, it should be more than 1,000 words. I know I've plucked that number out of my ass. Like it could be literally anything, but anything less than 1,000 words to me isn't even an abstract of an article. Like it's an extended abstract, just. Which is like, here's some ideas of some things that I sort of thought about. So what? Who cares? It's not original. It's not new. It's not going to revolutionize anything. It's not going to make anyone think about something new. It's just cool. Someone else has already said that. There's probably like 100 Instagram quotes about something that's related to it. Or some Twitter auto-generated tweets that are like, hey, have you thought about this? Maybe you should do that. Oh, really? No shit. You can tell I get frustrated with all this sort of stuff. Yeah, finding my voice is like, how do I rant without being offensive to everyone?
Yeah,
that's basically it. It's like, how do I rant without getting cancelled? In obviously the new cancel culture stuff.
it's quite an interesting. I mean, for me at the moment, I've spent quite a long time ranting against most of the productivity advice, but now I think for me, one of the things that I've been doing when I have a little bit of, when I make the time, let's just say that instead of have time, because I have time, it's whether I decide to use it in that way, is just ask why. Like just to start, that's what I'm more interested in knowing is everyone says these things, but nobody talks about why. Like I loved it was interesting to see people's reaction to me asking about time blocking. Some of them were, here's my new product, I think you'll like it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want a new product. Like I can buy, yeah, sure, I can get information. I don't need you to sell me something. I want to know you. Like that's what I care about because anyone can explain how to do it. You're right there.
Morgan. And because I've got some insider stuff, I just realized that it was doing some funky stuff.
Okay. It was a very scared face then.
I had so I can't show you now because it's gone, but essentially I tried to move a task, but it duplicated the task like 4 times and it was moving my sidebar down as I was moving the thing. So the sidebar was moving down as mine was moving down, and I was like, oh, what is going on?
Yeah. And so I was like, because there's a few things that my brain is like, oh yeah, this is just annoying. One is everyone is using like the AI tools like ChatGPT. Just it bugs me the way it's being promoted, because yes, it can do those things, but it does those things really badly.
I've given up with marketing.
Cool.
I've given up trying to like, well, not in that general sense of me marketing ideas, blah blah blah. I mean, given up with trying to challenge, battle, fight against it, because people will do what they want. So I'm not going to bother fighting a fight that I'm not going to win. But what I can do is fight a fight where people change their ideas, which is what I planned on doing with like the video essays that I will eventually get done. I've mentioned this like for 3 months now, but stuff gets in the way, life gets in the way, and as you can tell, like writing stuff takes time. Plus
Really?
editing isn't fun.
What? I thought you could write an entire book in a day. Why don't you use ChatGPT? Because it can write a book for you.
To use a Seth Godin quote, you can write a book in a day, but it takes you 5 years to understand what you're going to write about. Yeah. AI can write a book in a day, but you'd have no idea what it's trying to write about. It won't make sense. When I say it makes sense, I mean it won't make sense in trying to change anything or add anything to a conversation, because we've already had this discussion, but it can't do that.
No.
Yeah.
It can't. And I think everyone's trying to make it do that. And in the business world, everyone's trying to make it write content.
I don't think people are trying to make AI be original in its thought. I think they're using AI the way most people use most tools, is a shortcut, a hack to do something that they either can't be asked to do or don't have the time to do. Don't have the time to do because they don't prioritize that thing enough. Having said that, though, there are AI tools that are really helpful, like the image AI tools where you can upsize an image and it sort of fills in the gaps or fill in the spaces and those sorts of things. That's really useful. That's beneficial, but that's a tool. It's a tool to help you get something done. And this is something that we could riff on a little bit when it comes to the advice. I had a bit of a aha moment while I was writing the second draft of the information industry video. The stuff, the tips, tricks, hacks that are shared online, what I was trying to do is relate it to my education in sports coaching. And inside of sports coaching, there is the typical coaching courses that say there's the technical, the tactical, the social, and the emotional elements of coaching, which is true. Most coaching courses have focused on, and still, to be fair, the technical and tactical elements. So football, for example, what positions do you play? Do you play a 4-4-2? Do you play a 5-3, whatever? And where does the defender stand? And how does the defender move around? And what drills are we going to do? But they forget that everyone makes decisions slightly differently, i.e. the psychological factor. So you're looking at the ologies of psychology, philosophy, pedagogy, how people learn, like what environment are you going to give the player for them to learn the tactic that you want them to understand? And actually, will they come up with a better tactic that you haven't thought of? And in the coaching world, the social, the psychosocial elements and the holistic coaching requires other things from technical and tactical advice. But online, with most spaces, they give technical and tactical advice because it's easier to give and it's prescriptive. You can say, do this thing or learn that thing, or this is how you do X, Y, Z. And they overlook the social, emotional elements of it. Some people try and bring the social and emotional elements into their technical and tactical, but because of their lack of understanding, this could sound harsh, but because of their lack of understanding of what the science says about the social elements, they are just talking about tactics, and they deliberately or unknowingly generalize. I've been reading a lot of legislation recently because of work, and their wording is very intriguing. They're like knowingly or willingly, or it's like I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's something along the lines of they knew or they was too stupid to realize that this thing was happening. And I'm like, and that's how I feel with some of the content is just like they knew what they were doing or they were too stupid to realize that what they were doing wasn't helping. And
Yeah,
I think there's an element of that in most content because it's like, this is how you do the thing, tactical advice, but they know that it's not going to help most people. So it's like, so why are you doing it?
that's why I stopped. As much as like
That's why I didn't
that
start.
is, huh?
That's why I didn't start.
I don't think I even it was interesting because when I actually talk about stuff now and the design of my emails have changed
Mm.
because it's less about telling people what to do and just more about, hey, here's a thing. This is interesting. This is how you can try it. This is like an idea. This
That's
is
how I
how
pitch
I'm
all my
trying it.
videos.
Because that's exactly what it's like. I believe it should be because I can't give you answers unless I am in a room with you or over Zoom and actually talking with you, having every single aspect of nuance coming out of everything, which is almost impossible because we don't know all of it. But until I can sit with you, it's just improbable to
Mm-hmm.
create content on that scale. Which is
That's
why
exactly why, like the Obsidian videos and the Notion videos that I've done in the past, like this is the thing you can do, not this is a thing you should do. Which
yeah,
is why when I have put like the best or the ultimate thing in a title, I don't like it. But I know to an extent there has to be some sort of sensationalistic element to it, otherwise no one's going to watch it. Which is a pain in the bum.
yeah, yeah. I think that's that for me is the thing stopping me being a quote unquote creator.
Mm.
Like
Oh,
that is the bit of creator that I just can't, like, it rubs me the wrong way, which is why I never stayed on YouTube, which is why I always leave. Because it's like you need to put these things in there to make people react. I know I do. I don't want to.
that brings us to a whole other conversation, but I want to sort of just divert a little bit into an experience I had recently, which we can bring back, I think. So accounting, money, taxes, VAT, all that sort of stuff, all that fun stuff. Obviously, it's coming to that part of the year for self-assessments and things, and because of this new job, I need help. And I don't look, as most people will probably realize, I don't look like someone that earns that much money because I'm 26. I wear a university jumper, I wear some like sport trousers, and I wear trainers. And yes, the trainers have holes on the top because they're like meshed at the top, and playing sport and running around, your toes end up making holes. But I don't care because I'm inside most of the time, and most of the time I'm in my socks anyway. So I don't look like a traditional business person that earns a fair amount of money that really requires an accountant. And my accounting experience, summed up in a nutshell, was I walked in and they immediately judged me. They didn't like me, from my interpretation. I mean, yes, I can say it. So I'll tell the story. I was outside, like I've walked from, like, I parked the car, I walked in and I got my headphones in, so I've walked from the car. And as I sat there were two women in there. One of them looked sort of like mid-40s, one of them sort of like mid to late 20s, maybe early 30s. And the older looking lady looked at me and went straight back to her screen. It was sort of like a look of disgust of like, what are you doing outside? And the younger lady was looking at me and she looked confused. I put my earphones in my pocket and I walked in. One step in the door. Have you got an appointment with us? Yes, I do. I'm not going to say who it was with. I have an appointment at 1:30. What, with us? Yes, that's why I walked in the door. I'm not incompetent, people. But yeah, so I've walked in and she's like double questioned me about an appointment. I was like, yeah. And I sat down in the sofa. And then this man walks out of the office and looks at me confused and says, do you have an appointment? Yes, I do. Who's it with? I explained. He said, oh, okay. And he walked past me. And then a lady walked out the same office, walked past me, frowned, and walked straight past me. And then she said to the woman at the desk, you said my next meeting's here. And she went, oh, yeah, he's around the corner. And she just looked at me and went, oh, hi, how was your day? It's like, I really want to slap you right now. Yeah, it continues. So I sat down And she said, so what do you do? And I'm like, well, this is going to be complicated. So I said, I'm a content creator. Oh, okay. I was like, okay, sarcastic, but we'll go with it. And we're going down sort of like how much money I earn through different revenue streams. And I had explained by this point that I've got a full-time job in London. And she was like, oh, so how much do you actually need to do your self-employment with? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I have my self-employment and I have my full-time. And she said, oh, so the insert number here, the number isn't from your full-time. And I'm like, no, that's additional. Oh, so you're closer to this bracket then? Yes, that's why I'm in the fucking room. She treated me as if like I earn nothing. I'm this insignificant thing. And then so as soon as she realized the numbers that were coming out of like combined sources, she was like, oh yeah, we can help you with this, and we can do this, and we can do that, and you'll have to. And I'm like, hold up a second. Everyone in this place has just judged me because of what I look like and the way I'm portraying myself because of the clothes and stuff I wear. Now you have a number behind you. You drastically changed your tone of voice, changed your everything towards me. Okay, great. So I've left, and then I said to them, this is something else that's funny. She said, I think that sums it up. I then explained the student loan thing, which she didn't even ask about. She just, yeah, confusing. And then I said, so how much is it going to cost me? And she said, what do you mean? Well, how much do I need to pay you? I'm confused. You're not doing my accounts for free, are you? Oh, no. So obviously in her head, she already had me as a client. And this was a consulting conversation. I'm like smacking my head against the wall in my head. I'm like seething, but I was nice. I was polite, and I stepped out. And immediately, as soon as I stepped out the room, I thought, how in the world do content creators like these new people manage this world because of all the assumptions you're given? I was bucketed as like before even walking in, they just saw me through the glass. I was bucketed as this person that's like shouldn't be here, doesn't want blah blah blah, and I was like, okay. And that's in person. Online, it's worse. I was like massively set back by that. Just like in my head, I was like, how do people bucket content? If people are bucketing how I look on the street and walking into an accounting firm, how does the look impact the content you make, the videos you make? Obviously, I know doing the whole camera stuff is fine, but online, the judgments are insane, and that in-person experience just re-emphasized it. I was like, this is crazy. So marketing online, it's scary. Like and I don't know where AI is going to take it. That was kind of like a rant sort of for you.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like one of the things that I like, I believe AI is a tool and it is a valuable tool. Like that's just my viewpoint of like it has value, but how it is being promoted as a thing to fix all your marketing is just it's making, as we've discussed before, making the problem that we already have worse. Which is the thing that I'm just like, ah. And of course, because insurmountable problem, I'm like, I want to go play in it and like figure out why. And it's pretty relatively simple why, but like I'm like, but, and you have these two camps. You have these camps of people who are like, it's going to change the world, it's going to do all this, it's going to be all that, it's going to be all this, and they're not wrong. And then you have on the other side the people who are like, it's dangerous, it's going to cause people to be less human and communicate less, and this, and they're also not wrong. And then I'm sat here in the middle, yes, and yes, but right. It's not as simple as that. Because literally in this past week, I have managed to get some things done that I really have been waiting to do for a long time and do not have the bloody time to do. I haven't been able to prioritize that in my head because the processing of it was just too much for me to deal with at the time. But because of that tool and my understanding of how and the limitations it has and the fact that I know my content, who I am, what I do, and I have that understanding, I combine that understanding with the AI tool, and holy shit, it's everything that these people over here are saying. It's if you misuse it, this is going to happen. The side of like everything's going to go wrong, it's less human, it's less this, it's less that, it's less this. Yes, if it's used in the way it's currently being promoted and spoken about. But what my issue is that I take with it, on this hand side of like everyone saying it's this, it's bad, it's terrible, you shouldn't use it, it's nasty, it's blah 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 blah, is this puts people like myself who find value in that tool in a position of like, oh well, maybe we shouldn't use it because it's bad and it's wrong and it's this. And so that the value that can come from it, and I can hear myself trying to translate from the neurodiverse to, because of course in my business, neurodiverse is what I do now. So the translation is there, but I don't just mean neurodiverse here. I mean, there is value. And if it doesn't provide you value, I made this tweet, if it doesn't provide you value, don't bloody use it. You don't need to bloody use it. If you don't find a use for it, don't bloody use it. But if you do find a use for it and it's helping you to do the things you want to do easier, understand why it doesn't, what it can't do and will never do for a very long time, which is replace human communication, actual human to human communication, and then use it for the things it can.
But that right there, I think, like my human story and your AI story, both at the core of it has human interpretation. And the human interpretation bit is not going to change unless people have, like, change their minds.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a crazy world, and I wish more people would be more open in their thinking rather than sort of these bucketed thoughts.
And I've got people who are traditionally very open thinkers being incredibly closed-minded. I don't think that's even the right word, but they are incredibly fixed in their thinking. No, this is terrible. This is bad. This is just bad, 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 bad. And I'm like,
emotional.
Oh, it's so there's a visceral emotional reaction, and I'm so
it's where humans like direct themselves. So as soon as a human has an experience, it's an emotional experience to them, and the default of every human is to have an emotional reaction, which is normally the first thing that comes to their head. They don't normally think things through deeply on the first time, which is why when you see a lot of intellectuals talking about complicated conversations, they don't immediately give an answer. They ponder for a second. Or maybe they'll explain something about it and try and navigate their answer through the explanation, rather than saying yes or no, which obviously brings in nuance, which a lot of people don't like, because then it turns into, well, it depends, and what about this, and what about that? But that's the whole point. It's multifaceted. There isn't just a boxed answer to most things. Social scientist here.
There isn't, and that's the problem, because everybody wants a simple answer when there isn't one. The simple answer.
I don't think that's right. I don't think everyone wants a simple answer. I think everyone looks for a simple answer.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
but
and
why?
The distinction there is people want things quick, easy, simple, the quick fix, because it's easier, it's less, and as human bodies, like the biology, we want to do things efficiently, and the most efficient way to do something oftentimes is quicker. But it doesn't mean it's actually efficient. and most of the times, if you get into a loop of toxic, insert word, toxic self-help, toxic productivity, toxic whatever, you're being quick with things, but you're not being efficient, because it's actually taking you longer because you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I recognize this conversation went in like 4 drastically different directions, but coming to the end.
But going back round to what we started, like, from my experience, I don't know what my system's going to look like.
Yeah.
I don't have an end goal in mind.
How did you remember?
What?
How did you remember where we started? Normally, you don't remember. Normally it's me bringing it around the conversation because you're going, where were we again? And then I'll bring it through. How did you remember where we started?
I love that question. I don't know. I think it's because it's on my mind a lot right now.
Okay.
Like for me, the idea of developing my dynamic system is so, like it is literally there because I'm living it. Like I am constantly thinking about it.
The reason I pick at it is because what you've just done is the exact opposite of what ADHD people should be able to do because of working memory capacity, blah, 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 because you can't go backwards and forwards to things that you'd already done because your working memory is overloaded and blah, but you just did it. And this is something that I wish I could point out to more people when they make arguments. I'm like, that assumption you've just made. Why could you do this thing then?
Because it's the response, and I know the response because I just did it, hyper focus. Because we can do it, but it's directed.
So you were but you were hyper focused on what, 4 things at once?
Yeah. And I think like for me, this is my lived experience of autism. I'm not ADHD. I have autism. That is my diagnosis. That's what I have. And so for me, you want to poke at that so badly. I can tell you like, oh, I have questions.
It's not I have questions. It's just like, you're not ADHD, but you are ADHD. It's like,
am I?
When you look at the behavioral traits, if you were to get someone to diagnose you, would you likely get a positive diagnosis for ADHD?
Don't know. I mean, that's a whole problem in itself.
Exactly, but that's my point.
But yeah, like I am diagnosed autistic. That is so I'll use that as it's easy.
That's the medical diagnosis you've got. Yeah.
Medical diagnosis is autism. And so my lived experience of my condition,
neurodevelopmental disorder.
Yeah, whatever. My experience of that is it's not the fact I can't remember. Like, I can't translate 4 times.
Yeah, no, carry on.
Like, I will speak. Like, it's not the fact that I can't remember, and it's not the fact that I'm ditzy and all over the place. It's because I'm remembering too much. There's so much input that I can't cut off. Like, I have so much shit coming at me all the time and in my head and all of that. So I am always thinking about all of those things, even when I'm having a conversation. So usually my brain is like in 8 different places, but today we are talking about something that is already going through my head. And so because we're in the topic that my brain is really, really focused on, and everything is linking back to this right now because it is my life, that is how I can remember and go back. Whereas normally, like the connection between what we started talking about and where my head is at is different, which is an interesting thing of like, why? That my brain's just gone and done that now. Why? That's interesting. And so my brain is now going ahead to predict what you're going to say. Like, this is what the input I'm taking in your facial expressions, the input from your facial expressions. I'm going, okay, can I predict what he's going to ask me so that I can start thinking of an answer? That's what my brain is. Yeah, exactly. Everybody does that. But I'm just sharing like my actual experience now. And so all of that information that I'm taking in, from my understanding of a neurotypical brain, I'm using.
Are we using me as the neurotypical example?
No idea. I'm not going to define you.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. Like
you're just built different.
Yeah, like, well, we all are, but still, that's a whole nother thing we could just talk about forever. But like from I lost my train of thought now. What was I saying? Yes, that's it. So my understanding of neurodiverse or autistic, I think, is the one that I'm going to focus on because that's me.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
It's your identity.
It's my identity. It's part of who I am. Is that I can't switch off as many of the signals. And from my understanding, supposedly other people can. I struggle. It is a struggle. If I want to, I have to work a little bit hard. I can still do it. I can turn off signals that are coming in, but it requires a lot more effort for me to be able to turn off those signals.
Out of curiosity,
Mm.
the dog that was barking on your side a minute ago.
Yeah.
How frustrating was that?
Exceptionally.
Okay. Interesting. Because you carried on talking while the dog was going.
Yeah.
So I was like, in my head, I was trying to understand, because there was to me, there was nothing that I could see that was impeding your ability to communicate. I mean, it was a distraction, definitely. Obviously, I focused enough on it to bring it up in conversation. So I guess my question there would be, for the system, the distractions that come in, if you're aware of them all, how do you, like in your system now, like with Morgan, how do you avoid the distraction getting in the way with autism?
No idea.
Well, you must do it because you just spoke.
You
just spoke
do
while
it.
the dog you just spoke while the dog was going. So there must have been something either in your head that was saying, ignore that thing and carry on here, to do that.
I think so. There must be. I don't know what that is. Cognitively, I don't know. It's just something that I've trained myself to do. I can choose to phase things out.
So when you say trained yourself to do, when you were younger, would you not be able to speak if something else was going on?
Yeah, and I still, for certain, if it's one thing, I'm all right. But the moment there's more than one thing, it becomes more difficult. Especially if it's, once it gets to about 2 to 3 inputs at a time, which are different and they're going at different times, I am completely disrupted.
Interesting. I have the same experience, but for a completely different reason. Half deaf.
Yeah. And also another thing to add on to mine is, of course, I always forget that I am actually partially sighted because it's just what I've been, which, to be perfectly clear, by partially sighted, I mean I'm blind in this eye. So I can't see anything that's happening over here. So we both have that as well, which is funny. Like,
yeah, so, but yours is your left eye, mine's my right.
Yeah. Yeah, it flips.
Can I have your good eye?
No, you can't. I mean, it's not great anyway.
I'll swap out my bad eye.
No, I don't need too bad, thanks. Cheers for that.
I can have one of your ears instead then.
No, I like my ears. My ears are more acute. That must suck for you because, of course, with your sight being deteriorated anyway, your ears must have been better. And
well, no, so I lost my hearing. Like, I never had my hearing in my right ear, so the hearing was first.
Oh yeah, so the sight. I mean, for you, it's worse because you had sight and lost it. I've never had sight.
Yeah, I lost it 2.5 years ago now. Yeah. So lived with one ear for 24 years, then one ear, one eye. But yeah. So obviously when I'm trying to focus on something, even now, like I can't see you at all because it's on my right screen. So I have to look over there. I can see what's going on here, which is why this is my main screen, because I can actually see it. This one I can't. And which is why I smack the mic if it's too close, because I can't actually see it. It's just like, I say I can't see it. It's a blur.
Yes,
it's not like, I guess when I realized what blind was, and blind doesn't mean completely black. Blind means you can't identify things as objects. Like if I close my left eye,
it's also a sliding scale. Yeah.
Yeah. If I close my left eye, like there's a blackish object there. There's a black one in the middle and a big black one this side with like.
And of course, your brain will start to fill in that information for you as well, which is really fascinating.
But because I know what it is, because I've got my left eye, I can say, oh, that's the camera and that's that and that, blah blah blah. But yeah, so like focus of attention then becomes the question, and the focus of attention is the research that I'm trying to go into, and there's not enough there to give a good answer, which is why I was curious.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. If you were you saying that? It kind of brings me back when I was talking about like the doing, the actual action part. That's exactly it is. It's the focus of attention. Because I know what happens for me is I know what I want. I know what I want to do. I know why it's good. I know why it will help, which is all the things supposedly the experts say you need. If you want something hard enough, you'll do it. No, God, I wish it was that simple.
I mean, there's an element of truth, but
There is an element of truth, but that is like this tiny little bit of it. There is just so much more that isn't explored or thought about.
I think want hard enough broken down brings in most of those elements. But it's the assumption that want hard enough is just a case of like motivation, which is a whole other conversation. But I actually want to finish talking at some point.
Why?
Sorry, John. Because I have some questions to ask you.
Oh, sweet.
Yes.
So just to clarify,
Yeah, I was going to say
you spent so long, and now I'm just teasing you now. You spent so long all this time saying, "Oh, I want you to talk more and say things more," and now I actually talk more. You want me to shut up?
you were talking throughout the episode.
I know, right? I talk more.
That every time I give you space to talk, you just look at me. Like you can't say, "Oh, I need more time to talk." Like I give you time to talk.
No, that's not what I meant. I finally talk more, and you complain that I'm talking too much.
No, the conversation is moving forwards, and I'm like, let's cut the conversation here, John.
To clarify for everybody listening who isn't British, we're pissing around. This is
that means like sarcastic, having fun, joking,
having a laugh.
What is that? What's that funny thing? You can't do that.
No, Americans can't do that.
No.
I have got into trouble. I have got into trouble in one of my calls. Someone did not like and appreciate the fact that I blamed Americans for why ChatGPT was down. Get the humor. I was like, ooh.
You got to be careful.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. Have a good week, everyone, and we'll see you. Well, you can listen to us next week.
Yeah, bye.